Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beth Worrell. Welcome to our webinar today. We are delighted to have you here joining us today for a really interesting conversation about engaging employees on AI with our responsible AI partners, Human Technology Institute. As I said, my name is Beth Worrell. I work for the National AI Centre, leading the responsible AI and AI literacy teams. Before we kick off the content today, I do want to acknowledge that many of us are meeting on traditional lands of the First People of Australia. I want to recognise and pay respects to their cultural and spiritual connection to lands, waters, seas, skies and communities. I'm actually joining you today in Kaurna country down here in South Australia, and it would be great to hear where you are all joining us today. So what we'll cover today, we want to talk to you and share some updates from some research that Human Technology Institute have done on engaging employees in the discussion about AI. And this is a topic that we hear all the time at the National AI Centre. How do you engage your employees? How do you bring them on this journey? And what effective AI engagement actually is? I think what I love about this research so much is that there is, in addition to insights, a range of practical tools that you can actually use in engaging your employees in your workplace. We will hear today from Llewellyn Spink, who is part of the Human Technology Institute at UTS, as well as Meredith Caldwell from Good Design Australia. So we're really delighted to have them join and share their expertise. I do want to just reflect quickly and tell you a few things about the National AI Centre. So we've been operating for a couple of years. We actually have a new executive director who joined a few months ago, Lee Hicken, and we have a revitalised vision, and that is to make Australia a world leader in AI innovation and responsible AI practices. So we are looking to do this through unlocking the potential and the positive impact of AI here in Australia. We want to deliver reliable and trusted information to help build AI confidence for all Australians. So we are very excited about this new vision and mission. We have 4 key objectives and strengthened by another objective to build local and global confidence in our own Australian AI ecosystem. I will be sharing a report at the end of this webinar today that has provided a spotlight on Australia's AI ecosystem with some latest data and figures. So definitely recommend you take a look at that. But we also aim to promote the AI opportunity that we have here in Australia and make sure that we are sharing many of the exciting opportunities that AI will bring for Australian organisations and communities, not just focusing on the risks. We want to make sure that we are spotlighting and showcasing Australia's many AI innovators and entrepreneurs. Where I seek to focus is building Australia's AI responsibility area, make sure that people across organisations, nonprofits and communities use AI safely and responsibly, and make sure that industries and communities everywhere have the tools and information they need to adopt AI in a confident and really responsible way. So we're excited. This new vision, we will be seeking to work across 4 key areas in the next few years. We will be building a stronger AI industry intelligence with some material and research and reports that the National AI Centre will make available free to the Australian community. We will continue to grow AI industry adoption right across the economy, so working across all kinds of different sectors and with businesses of all shapes and sizes. We will continue to strengthen and hopefully simplify some of our AI advice around how you can use this technology in a safe and responsible way. And an area that I'm particularly passionate about is building Australia's AI literacy. So how do we make sure that Australians have all of the information information and education they need to use this technology safely and confidently. So again, very, very exciting time to have you join the National AI Centre. Please remember to subscribe to all of our updates, and we look forward to having you not only participate in this event, but many of our future events as well. I will just remind you that you can use the Q&A function to submit questions to the presenters. We will have lots of opportunity to answer questions at the end of the presentation, and we will be sharing and disseminating the slides after this event. So please make sure that that you stay tuned for that. We will share that very shortly after the event today. So with that, Llewellyn, I am going to hand to you, and thank you again for making the time to join us today.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you very much for NAIC for bringing us all together today. I'm joining from Sydney, from Gadigal land, the Eora Nation, and it's great to be here to share some of our insights from our new guide to worker engagement, which I co-wrote with my fellow presenter, Meredith Caldwell, as well as Neil Walters and Professor Nicholas Davis, together with support from many others in the HTI team, particularly our research assistant, Gianluca Cora. So this guide is the latest publication from HTI's AI Corporate Governance program. If you haven't heard of HTI, we're part of UTS. We are a multidisciplinary team. And at the core, what we're trying to do is embed human values into new technologies, particularly AI systems. And through our AI Corporate Governance program, we're trying to develop the capability of Australian organisations in AI governance and help corporate leaders make more informed and responsible decisions around how they're adopting and managing and governing AI. And we developed this latest guide following research that HTI conducted last year in partnership with Essential Research, which looked at the impact of AI and automation on workers. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail later, but a clear message from that was that many workers feel like AI is being imposed on them. It's being done to them rather than with them. And often these systems are being introduced with very little or no genuine consultation or engagement with the people who are actually expected to use these systems. And workers, they have a lot to contribute. And through this guide, we wanted to highlight the value of those insights from workers and provide practical advice on how organizations can effectively engage their workers. And what we mean by worker engagement is really those structured approaches where you're seeking feedback and input from staff about particular issues, organizational changes, new initiatives, particularly in this case, the adoption of AI systems. And really it's about actually listening to the perspective of workers and then incorporating that into decision-making processes. So today we wanted to kind of share some of the key insights from the guide. I'll start by talking about why it's so important to engage with workers. I'll then hand over to Meredith to step through what effective engagement looks like. I'll come back and discuss some of the practical ways that you can put this into action before Meredith will wrap up with guidance on where leaders and organizations can start. But before we get into the why and the how, I think there's probably a more fundamental question, which is why are we engaged? Why are we using AI at all? AI is being increasingly adopted across industries with the promise of boosting productivity, reducing cost, streamlining processes, or improving customer service. And while AI can deliver many of those benefits, often the reality falls a little short. As anyone who's tried to convince a self-checkout machine that the item in the bagging area is in fact not unexpected will understand. And this kind of automation is an example of what Nobel laureates Darren Asiegler-McGlue and Simon Johnson describe as so-so automation. So you get all the disruption, you get the worker displacement, but you don't actually get any of the productivity gains. And I think that's the risk when workers are just replaced rather than empowered by AI. And this matters because productivity is exactly what many are hoping that AI will deliver. And in fact, the Australian government has made lifting productivity, one of its priorities for this current term, given productivity growth is at the lowest level it's been in about 60 years. And like many companies, it's looking to AI as the solution. But you don't get the productivity benefits simply by buying the latest AI system and switching it on. And the numbers, as we kind of set out here on the screen, back that up. Around 80% of AI projects are estimated to fail, which is more than double the rate of traditional IT projects. According to a Boston Consulting Group survey from this year, only 1 in 4 executives are reporting that AI systems are delivering significant returns on investment. And when you start to think about why, I think it's because the value from AI doesn't just come from the system itself. It comes from how it's used. And that ultimately depends on your people. And right now, I think that's the area where we're falling short. There's research from the University of Melbourne and KPMG published earlier this year, which found that the trust of Australians and their use of AI is significantly lower than many other countries, including many developing countries. And I think maybe that's not surprising because people don't trust what they don't understand, which is why engaging with workers may be the missing piece in Australia's productivity puzzle. So as I mentioned earlier, we did some research last year. It's called our Invisible Bystanders project, where we found that many organizations were introducing AI without any meaningful engagement with their workers. So many workers felt like invisible bystanders. More recent surveys have actually confirmed this, including by the Community and Public Sector Union and McKinsey, where around 1 in 5 workers said that they were consulted before the introduction of AI in their workplace. And what we tried to do in our research was understand how AI and automation were impacting a whole range of different workers, including nurses, retail workers, and Australian public service. And we undertook deep engagement with these workers using a combination of different methods, such as interviews, focus groups, as well as online diary entries, where they could record over a period of around 10 days how they were seeing the use and impact of AI in their workplace. And at the start, most workers had fairly low awareness of AI, low trust that it was used responsibly. But by the end of that process, they were actually able to offer some really thoughtful insights into the ethical, legal, as well as operational challenges that AI systems were posing. And these are all insights that their leadership teams would probably have never heard because they hadn't actually deeply engaged their workforce on these issues. So when organizations fail to tap into this expertise, they're not just missing out on the value of hearing from diverse perspectives. They're really just making it harder for their organizations to get the best results from AI systems. Engaging workers is not just a ticker box exercise, it's actually results in better AI outcomes. We set out some of these in our report. The range of benefits include better functional outcomes, because when you have workers involved in the design or the deployment, then those systems are more likely to actually meet the real needs of the workers and perform more effectively in the context that they're being used. Ultimately, workers still know more about their jobs than algorithms do. That engagement builds worker trust, not just in the AI systems, but also their trust in the organization. Worker engagement is also a key part of good AI governance. Stakeholder engagement is one of the guardrails in the voluntary AI safety standard. And in many cases, it may also even be a legal requirement under work health and safety laws or enterprise agreements or industrial awards, where major technological changes in an organization require worker consultation. It also can result in greater ownership. So then you get greater buy-in from workers because they will feel that they're shared owners in these resources, and they're more likely to use and adopt these systems. Finally, engagement also helps identify knowledge gaps and can help then build the confidence and capability in those workers. And these aren't just abstract benefits. In our research, we found a number of different studies that showed significant financial benefits from engaging with workforces, including more likely to succeed with transformation projects like AI projects, more likely to empower workers to actually perform at their best and to deliver their best results, and more likely to achieve greater returns on AI investments. And finally, just to give you a quick example of engaging workers in practice, in 2023, Westpac launched its Citizen Development Program, which was to help employees improve the way they work using low-code tools. So rather than taking that kind of top-down approach of telling workers which AI systems they should be using and what they wanted to automate, they invited their staff to identify pain points and co-create automation solutions. So that meant you had non-technical staff across a wide range of the business being involved in starting to build simple apps to eliminate repetitive tasks and improve their efficiencies. They were supported by a central team who had kind of technical expertise and give them guidance. They were also working to address or uncover any deeper workflow issues. But ultimately, within about a year, they had around 300 staff built automations, and they were reporting savings of around 1 million hours of work. So in this example, automation became something that was led by the teams, not imposed on them. And that built trust, it built capability, it built momentum. And those results don't just happen by accident. They really require that effective and planned engagement. And to talk us through what effective engagement looks like, I will now hand over to Meredith.
Thanks, Llewellyn. So as Llewellyn mentioned, there are lots of benefits to engaging workers in your AA program, but you need to have engagements that are effective to be able to access those benefits. Next slide, please. So we looked at examples in organisations across Australia and abroad and found that there were 3 principles that were consistently present in effective engagements. These were engagements that are responsive, collaborative, and adaptive. Next slide, please. We also identified some key features of what these principles are to try to bring to life what we mean by these principles and to make it really action-oriented for leaders to be able to take this forward. So if we could go to the next slide, we're actually going to jump into each of these key principles and talk about them a little bit. So what does it mean to be responsive? This means being responsive to the needs of real people. It means being responsive to the context of your organisation, and it means being responsive to the specific workers and meeting them where they are at, professionally, culturally, technically, and socially. So if I were to encourage you to take away one thing regarding responsive engagement, it would be to really think about what are the needs of your people and how can you tailor your engagement methods to meet your situation of the organisation and the people. Too often do we see leaders sort of taking an AI technology and running with it to be competitive, or perhaps having unrealistic expectations of what the AI technology solution can provide them or the organisation. So I would encourage you to think about what are the needs that you would like AI to solve for? How do you know that those are the real needs, and how do you know that AI will help solve them? because without sort of answering these questions, the AI solution may not be useful, effective, or adopted. We'll jump to the next key principle, which is effective engagements are collaborative. I'm sure we can all think about some engagements that we've been involved in or attended that have been really collaborative, and ones that have not been so interactive or inclusive. And to be really effective, we found that across the board, these need to be collaborative, especially with AI and building that trust and shared responsibility. The features of collaborative engagements that we found is really about being co-owned and building that co-ownership between workers and leaders to create momentum and shared responsibility in exploring the space that AI can fill, but also responsibility over the outcomes that AI could provide the individuals, but also the organisation. It's inclusive, so it includes varied contributors from across different perspectives, roles, lived experiences, etc. And it's really interactive, so more than an information gathering engagement, but really a two-way conversation in a safe environment that can help you obtain that rich input and promote that mutual understanding of where AI can play a role. So again, if I were to encourage you to take away one thing about collaborative engagements, it's to consider how you can even further promote co-ownership in an inclusive and interactive way, because as we've seen, empowering people to provide input into the problem space and take responsibility can really create meaningful change. And you might do this through co-creation or co-design workshops, but that's not the only way you can do it. In our report, you can see there's a case study around Deutsche Telekom that created councils of employees and joint AI committees with their staff to really integrate workers into their AI programs. And this for them resulted in staff trust in their AI systems, AI that meets the needs of staff, and staff who understand the AI better, which results in smoother rollouts. And we'll jump to the third principle, which is effective engagements are adaptive. So this means remaining open to change and iterating and adapting your plan if you need to, given what you hear. It means entering the process with the intention of taking worker input to influence your future decisions. And it means being reflective to pause and think about the intended and unintended consequences of what your next steps will be now that you've taken into account the worker input. If I were to encourage you to take one thing away about adaptive engagements, it's really pausing to be responsible and making sure that you're integrating the learnings that you're obtaining from the different expertise that you've included from your workers. If we can go to the next slide, we're going to touch now a little bit on the other element of effective engagement, which is timing. In our report, we speak about the need for engagement to be continuous throughout the AI program. So what we tend to see is a lot of, or the majority of worker engagement happening in implementation. So really when you're embedding an AI solution. And normally that's a technical solution. There are also other solutions such as your strategy when you implement it, your policy, your governance structure, etc. And we argue that the engagement really needs to happen from the start, when you shape your AI purpose, when you're designing your solutions, and when you're embedding and governing your AI. If you jump to the next slide, please. So let's start with shaping the AI purpose. This is really where we've seen the least amount of worker engagement in organisations. And this is really a missed opportunity for organisations to understand worker needs and set up your AI program or your following next steps to be really based on needs and aligning your AI initiatives with gaps that need to be filled. If we jump to the next slide, why is it important to engage workers when you're co-designing an AI solution? This is really around enabling a joint understanding of your worker needs, your organizational constraints, and the requirements across the business. So an example of where this has been done that you'll see in our report is by the Australian Public Service. The Digital Transformation Agency coordinated a 6-month trial of Microsoft 365 Copilot in this phase of their AI program. And the intention was really to check that the solution met the need of the organisation of productivity gains and surface implementation challenges that workers might have. But it actually went further than that. It went beyond user testing of a tool to set up tests and gain collective inputs as to what workers thought the AI future could be for the organisation. And so the team there actually gathered inputs from thousands of workers to inform the strategy moving forward by integrating workers into this phase of the AI program. And we'll jump to the next phase. Thanks, Llewellyn. Why should you engage workers in embedding and governing AI? This is really around ensuring that your solutions are adopted and trusted. And there is some worker engagement that's been happening here already, but would really encourage everyone to reflect on how much more they can do here to make sure that their AI programs are a success. We'll jump to the next slide. Lastly, on the effective engagement topic, I just want to say that although we think it's really important to continuously engage workers throughout the AI program, something is better than nothing, especially when it's done genuinely. So would encourage, if you haven't already, to get started and to think about the principles of effective engagement, to think of, are there any there that you can strengthen or dive deeper into. You don't need to engage everyone at every phase of your program, but having a representative sample and having some engagement is a really great start. Thanks, Llewellyn.
Thanks, Meredith. So what are some of the methods that organisations can use to engage with workers? In our guide, we highlighted 4 practical and adaptable methods that could be used, as Meredith was saying, at different stages of the life cycle. It's not to say that these 4 methods that we've selected are the only ones. There are, lots of different methods. The right one will depend on your organisation's needs. And combining different methods can also be an effective way to reach different groups and get a fuller picture. And so just to add, in our guide, we do have kind of sample templates to show you what each method will look like in practice. So if anyone's interested, please take a look, as it has a lot more detail. But I just wanted to highlight some of the strengths and weaknesses and what the methods are that we explore in this guide. So the first 2 that we highlighted were dialogic interviews and collective brainstorming. So by dialogic interviews, this is more than just kind of a simple traditional question and answer format. The idea is to really engage in a genuine conversation with workers in the interview format. Certainly, the interviewer will still have that predetermined set of questions, but they should be also ready to kind of probe deeper, get staff to kind of expand on their views and try to bring in, feedback from different responses across the process. So it's a flexible tool that really allows organizations to get quite detailed and rich insights into people's needs and priorities. They can be done either one-on-one or in small groups, which does mean that they are a bit time intensive. So, you might only run a handful of these interviews if you're a small organization, or you might run, say, up to 50 if you're in a large organization. But just to reiterate, as Meredith said, worker engagement, it doesn't mean you have to speak to every single employee. What's important is hearing, I guess, from a representative and diverse sample. So across different levels of seniority, across different parts of the business, across people who are using the tool in different ways. So if there are people developing the tool and people using AI tools, as well as people from different demographic backgrounds. So really making sure that you get the right recruitment of the right people is really important. Collective brainstorming is another method which allows for much broader participation. So unlike interviews where you go deep with a small group, this is a method to involve many more people, especially if you're conducting it through an online platform. So you can have, say, an online forum or platform that is open for staff to log on, share feedback, or share new ideas in their own time and at their own pace. And this approach really does help surface kind of a wide range of perspectives from across the organization, but it does require that active community management, because if people aren't engaging on the forum, then participation is going to quickly drop off. And it's also important to think about how to get quality input by setting out, well, what are the goals and what kind of contributions do we want people to make through this platform? The other two methods that we highlighted are co-design workshops and reflective surveys. Co-design workshops are collaborative sessions. You can run them in person or online, and it's really about getting staff together in a room, virtual or physical, to really explore what their needs are, to test ideas, to give feedback on particular AI systems. And that co-design process helps build that shared ownership and understanding. And as I was talking about at the start, people are more likely to trust and use an AI system if they have that shared ownership. The main barrier, I think, for this approach is really the time and the cost, both to design and run the workshops and to ensure that there's skilled facilitation of the workshops. But when they're done well, they can be a really powerful way to develop and align AI solutions to the particular needs of your organizations. And finally, we have reflexive surveys, which are a scalable way of getting feedback from across a large number of staff. And what we mean by reflexive is just going beyond asking people what they do or what they think, and asking more why and how, and really inviting workers to examine some of their expectations on their initial responses. So, it involves more open text responses and fewer, binary options. And surveys, I think, work particularly well when used in combination with interviews or workshops, because then you can get kind of a breadth of quantitative data, and then you can understand that more with the qualitative insights. They do require quite thoughtful design and analysis, which can be time consuming, but given the scale that they operate at, you can try and get your whole workforce to engage in them. They're cost effective from that perspective, provided you do get a strong enough response rate. And as I mentioned at the start, these sort of different methods can be used for different purposes, for different needs. These are not the only way of using these tools, but some suggested ways of thinking about how to apply them. If you're looking to really explore some staff need in depth, the dialogical interviews are a great tool. If you're trying to generate ideas from across the business, collective brainstorming might be more appropriate. Or if you really just wanted to get more structured feedback on a kind of a new AI solution or policy, those reflexive surveys or co-design workshops can help test what you're thinking or your proposals and build that buy-in. And with that, I will hand back to Meredith.
Thanks, Llewellyn. So I know we've spoken about a lot here in a short amount of time. There is a lot more in the report that you can refer back to, but we wanted to highlight another sort of practical element of the report for getting started with AI worker engagement. We can jump to the next slide. I just want to bring your attention to a somewhat checklist that we have at the end of the report. It's a 2-page list of questions that are based around who, what, when, where, why, and how, that are really designed to prompt leaders or team leaders before moving forward with your worker engagement to check that you've considered how it might be effective. And so these questions are based on the principles of effective engagement, as well as the timing requirements that we've mentioned, and prompt you to check that you're using the right template and methodology and have tailored it to your situation. So questions are in there are things like what problem are you trying to learn about, to prompt leaders to think about a problem rather than starting off with a solution. There are questions such as who will be engaged, is there appropriate diverse representation, who will be a sponsor, where will the engagement take place, online or in person, where will the leaders be to minimise any power imbalances and create a safe space. So there's lots there that you can refer back to after this call and in the future as a resource for you to come back to and check that you are setting yourself up for an effective engagement when you're engaging workers in your AI program. I'll hand it back to you, Llewellyn.
Thanks, Meredith. I think that brings us to the end of our presentation. If you do have any more information, if you are interested in finding out more about our AI Corporate Governance program, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we'll hand back to Beth for some questions.
Oh, thank you so much. I do have a lot of questions, but I'm really interested in one particular question in relation to the point you raised, Llewellyn, with the KPMG University of Melbourne report, which talked about Australians and our trust or not in AI systems. And one of the things that stood out to me in that report is that Australians are the least trusting, but also had the least interest in learning about AI than many other countries. So what do you think organisations can think about doing to excite workers about learning about AI? What examples or ideas have you seen that might help people feel a bit more enthusiastic about learning about this technology?
I think what's great is really creating that opportunity for safe experimentation. So chances for workers to play with these tools, discover how they might assist them, ask questions without feeling stupid or without kind of being judged. And I think that effective training is also really important. We've talked about kind of effective engagement, but another point that really came out of our invisible bystanders research was that workers don't feel like they've received effective training on AI tools, and often, they will run through an online click-through program, but they weren't given that chance to play, to ask questions, to get feedback, to be sort of tested on what they're doing it. So I think, the better training will help people to use these tools in better ways.
I often think, having worked in the tech industry, that you start with how this technology can solve people's problems. You don't start with the technology itself, which is something I think of. Another thought I had in during that presentation was, and not every organisation is in the circumstance where they have lots of different people with different skill sets, dedicated to different tasks, but AI, the implementation of AI projects really does highlight the need for people with lots of diverse experiences and across lots of different teams within the organisation to be successful. Would you agree that that's part of the success story here?
Yeah, 100%. I think the best AI projects and AI governance is done where you have that multidisciplinary approach. I know sort of we did a case study on KPMG's development of KimChat last year, and they talked about how, from the beginning, they brought all people together in the same room. So you had sort of legal, privacy, data, IT, so that you can kind of bring together all that expertise when you're designing and developing your AI solutions.
I guess people in that kind of human resources, employee engagement piece are going to be vital to this as well. So for organisations that are smaller and perhaps don't have dedicated people looking at these functions, how and where would they start with this journey in terms of employee engagement? Perhaps it's even easier if it's a much smaller team. But did you think about the applicability for perhaps smaller organisations?
Yeah,
Meredith, you jump in.
I'd love for you to share the experience from HDI as well. It can be easier with smaller organisations. Would definitely still recommend thinking about all of the principles of effective engagement, and to I guess remind leaders in smaller organisations that diversity and different perspectives can come from different types of different perspectives. So it may be that you're trying to include a whole range of different lived experiences or different ages, or different locations if you actually have a lot of your team that does the same role, because they are also bringing a different perspective on how they're approaching AI, what they'll think about AI, and how much of a challenge it's going to be for them to adopt. So still very much applicable. It may just mean you can include everyone in your organisation, even though we said you don't need to. But it could also mean that you can pick a few people from a few different diversity factors to include in your engagement.
Yeah, maybe just to add on that, we published a report on the people skills and culture needed for effective AI governance. And in that we sort of set out the different roles that you might want to consider involving in AI governance. And I think that's sort of similar to kind of people you also want to be engaging with as part of this process. And in small organizations, it may be that there's one person wearing many hats, but there's still the kind of functions that you want to include.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a couple of questions coming in from the audience. Jamie Noda asked a really good question regarding the Westpac example, but presumably this could be a challenge faced by lots of organisations, whereby if they are engaging with employees and building that kind of bottom-up engagement and identifying ideas from the frontline workers, how do you then make sure that those ideas link up to the broader AI strategy that the organisation has, and that they are sort of one and the same?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great point. You need that combination of both the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach. Leadership, have to have that sort of clear strategy in place, have sort of set out the AI policy. Here's sort of our broad objectives. Here's how we want to use AI safely and responsibly. But then you do want to kind of hear from the people at the front line into how these tools should actually be used in practice. And I think in the Westpac example, they had oversight from a centre of excellence to provide kind of guidance and expertise. And they're also engaging with workers to sort of provide them with training and guidance, so that when they were developing these tools, they were doing it with some sort of established guardrails to help direct them where they were going. I don't know, Meredith, if you had anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where collaboration is really key. It's not just about leaders hearing from workers about their experiences or where they think there might be challenges in using a tool. It's really about a two-way conversation, so workers can hear what the challenges that leaders are facing are, and what the constraints are within the strategy, and for the workers to have that awareness as well and tailor their input based on that. And this is an iterative conversation that keeps going. So I think that's often a piece that's sometimes not considered when we think about engagement. It's sometimes used as, okay, let's get as much information as we can in, and we're not thinking about it necessarily going out, or it's really sort of confined to only sharing what we've done with your input. But there's so much more that we can gain by having a two-way conversation that's really open and honest, with the leaders sharing, I've actually got this problem. This is how I think we're going to solve it, but you tell me what you see, and then from my vantage point, I'll try to link up some of the dots, or we'll get into a room so you can also hear from the different silos that we might need to break down to overcome the challenge or question they have.
Yeah, I was just kind of reflecting quickly about one of my favorite TV shows when I was living in the UK was Undercover Boss, and the CEO goes and has a day in the life of a frontline worker, but it's people in those roles that often have such brilliant ideas to save money and time and create a better customer experience. So it stands to reason that they would also have some great contributions to make from an AI perspective. Michelle Tunis has put in a statement, but I think it really is such an important point around ensuring that workers are seeing the relevance of AI to their day-to-day, but most in particular, addressing the elephant in the room, which is fear, and the fear that AI is going to either change their job, replace their job, create a sense of fear about the future for many people. Is that something that you observed in your research, and what would you say about how organisations can really perhaps reassure employees that this is about augmenting jobs and creating better jobs in the future, we hope?
Yeah, in our Invisible Bystanders research, we actually saw a mixed response on this issue. Perhaps not surprisingly, people in the retail sector had much higher fears around being replaced by AI and automation. But in the nursing sector and in the public servant sector, that wasn't as big a fear, because they felt that, particularly in the nursing side, that human side of the job wasn't going to be replaced by AI anytime soon. And I think in the public sector, that the complexity of the work and the nuance that was needed meant that, at least at this stage, they weren't likely to be entirely replaced by AI systems. And I think that engagement process is really crucial to this, and to helping employees understand how AI might be used, to see then the limitations of where it's used, and to see like how it can most effectively support them. And I think once they start exploring and playing with these tools, they'll see, oh, look, this is great to help me with these particular tasks, but it's not going to, completely replace me. It's just going to be another tool that I use each day.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree, and I think the example of the expected item in the bagging area certainly brings a tear to my eye in terms of automation not always landing with people, and certainly seeing the value of that human service as well. There have been some really fantastic comments here about opportunities to collaborate, and it's certainly touching a point I think that people are really understanding and kind of trying to contemplate how to best do this. There is a question here from Dr. Chris Dandre, who I guess speaks to the challenge of AI because it's rapidly evolving, and where do you start with all of these things? What kind of advice do you have for a CEO, or even just in the implementation of an AI project? Where do people best start with this, and in particular, where do they start in terms of employee engagement as well?
I'm happy to take this one. I think really the first place to start is rather than looking at assuming that AI is the solution, is looking at what the problem actually is. So thinking about, what are the needs of your organization? What issues are you trying to solve? And then considering if AI is the right solution. Maybe it is, or maybe there's a simpler solution out there, or maybe you don't need the latest whiz-bang AI technology. Maybe there's more traditional forms of machine learning that might be more suitable in this case. So I think understanding, why whether AI is the right solution, and then kind of engaging with staff further to sort of understand how best to deploy AI in that context. I think would be a great place to start. I don't know if Meredith, you had anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add that given the rapid change in AI and trying to keep up with all of that change, we've seen a lot of CEOs be quite daunted about that. So obviously not alone, but I would encourage you to keep that communication channel open and to think about engagement, not necessarily always as a big engagement or a big investment, but creating a culture where that communication is staying open, where you can draw people together to get their input on things quickly, and to I guess learn from each other and continue to hear about those changes so you can stay across them.
Yeah, and I think often I reflect on the advice that I try and impose upon my own house. You start by starting. Like sometimes you look at the kitchen and you think, oh my God, I'm never going to clean this mess up. Certainly after the kids have been in there cooking, but you start by starting. And I think as you start, the job itself seems to be more controllable, and you build your confidence, and sooner or later you're kind of actually doing a lot more than you thought you would. But you have to start somewhere. You start by starting. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will share these slides. We will share a link to the report as well, and certainly if people have any questions or comments in regard to working with HCI or some questions about the research, your contact details are there, Llewellyn, and thank you so much, Meredith, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I do want to just finish up by mentioning the National AI Centre have 2 more webinars coming up for the month of July. We will be doing a special webinar that does a deeper dive into our AI adoption tracker, and that webinar will be hosted by Wilhelmina Diverston, and we have a special presentation by our research partner, Fifth Quadrant. And very excited to say that we also have the report author of the Building Trust in AI report that we mentioned earlier, Professor Nicole Gillespie from the University of Melbourne, will be joining us towards the end of the month. And we're really excited to get stuck into that research and learn about how Australia stacks up against the rest of the world. We also have a big national conference coming up this year. It is in Brisbane, so the 21st and 22nd of October. This is a collaboration that we have with CEDA. We would love to see you here at the event, and it's I think it's the fourth event that we've done. It's a fantastic couple of days, and so we highly recommend that you check that out. I did mention that we produced and published the AI ecosystem report recently, so you can certainly download that now just to better understand what Australia's own AI ecosystem is represented by. It's an excellent read, and it gives a really good snapshot of where we are excelling, as well as where there are opportunities to really concentrate to build our national capability in this space. If you are an Australian organisation, we would also love you to join our new AI directory. It's a few minutes to fill in a form to be listed on this website. And again, it's a way for us to help spotlight and showcase and promote all of the excellent AI businesses here in Australia. And lucky last, please get in touch with us if you would like any more information about our programs. Please remember to follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our news channels. We run these events regularly. We have also lots of other kinds of research reports, resources, templates. So we're very, very keen to hear from you, and we hope to see you next time on our next webinar later on in the month of July. Thank you and goodbye.